The past 3 or 4 decades has seen a dramatic transformation in the United States. The southern states, which for long were regarded as a bit of an economic sideshow, have suddenly become the economic hub of the country. A generation or so ago, the traditional business clusters in America were centered on New York, Boston, Chicago, California. Today, capital, people, and business are moving south. It's the southern United States that is increasingly the economic, technological, and demographic center of the country. This is really important. It's a huge shift in the economic profile of the United States. However, if you look at a map of the southern United States, there's one state right in the middle of the South that's missed out on being part of this southern success story. And that's Mississippi, the state that I'm talking to you from. Mississippi, you could say, has almost been conspicuous by its absence in the southern success story. Mississippi has long been one of the poorest states in America, and sadly, it remains so. Now, a generation ago, Tennessee, Nashville were famous for country music. Today, Nashville is not just known for its music, it's a huge economic center. It's the place young Americans want to move to. Atlanta has grown enormously. North and South Carolina have flourished. Florida is booming. Texas is no longer just oil and hee-haw cowboys. It's electric cars and putting rockets into space. Now, to be fair to Mississippi, we are starting to see signs that Mississippi is joining the southern success story. There's no doubt about this. There's a record low unemployment in Mississippi now. We have got more jobs here in Mississippi than we've ever had before. There's also been a steady trickle that's actually now turning into a torrent of inward investment into Mississippi. Without question, we're starting to see growth and innovation in Mississippi too. Amazon recently announced a $10 billion investment a few miles from where I'm speaking to you. Not a week goes by without some company or other announcing investment. There's Ashley Furniture just announced they're putting more money into the state. There's a company called Sipcam Agro, a company called Liebherr. All of these have recently, in the past month alone, announced many millions of dollars being put into the state and many jobs being created. This growth reflects the fact that conservative policy in Mississippi is having a positive effect. There are two really significant things that have happened in Mississippi in the past 2 years that explain this growth in our state. Number one is the reduction in the state income tax. We now have a flat 4%, or on the way to a flat 4% income tax in Mississippi, significantly lower than what it was. Low income tax means that Mississippi becomes a less expensive place to do business. It means that if you earn money in Mississippi, you get to keep more of your own earnings and spend it. It's a great way of growing our state. But that's not the only reason why we're starting to see Mississippi join the Southern success story. We've also seen significant labour market deregulation. A law in 2022 that did something called occupational licensing reform. It was not really commented on much at the time, but hugely significant. The effect of that law has been to, in effect, create a downward pressure on those who regulate the labour market in Mississippi, and it's meant more jobs. It allows people to come from out of state. It also makes it a lot easier for people in Mississippi to get certification and licensing for jobs. So that's great news too. But the reality is that we've not yet done enough in Mississippi to transform this state. We're still, I'm afraid to say, not fully part of the Southern success story. And I think we need to recognise that there are two things that really do now need to be done. The first is education. A state isn't going to grow if young people in the state aren't properly qualified for the jobs that are out there. And a state's not going to attract people from outside if there are concerns about the state of education in Mississippi. So what Mississippi needs to do with education is recognise that public education in our state is just not as good as it needs to be. Yes, there's been some progress, but the reality is that 4 out of 10 fourth graders cannot read to basic level. We need change. And the only way we're going to get real change in education, the only way we're going to see significant improvements in Mississippi is not by banning cell phones in every classroom. It's not by changing to a 4-term, 4-semester year. The way to give Mississippi the reforms we need and to allow choice and competition into the education sector is to give parents control over their share of the education budget. Now, Mississippi is surrounded by 3 states that have done this. In Arkansas, in Alabama, and in Louisiana, parents get control over their share of the tax dollars. Basically, if you live in one of those states, you either have or will shortly get control of about $8,000 to $9,000 a year, which you can then allocate on behalf of your child to a school of your choice. We need to see something big and bold like that in Mississippi too. There's a second thing we need to do. We are chronically overregulated in this state when it comes to healthcare. That's bad for healthcare. It means that it's one of the reasons why our state has such bad health outcomes. But it also inhibits economic growth, because if you stop and think about it, as a society gets richer, we tend to want to spend more on our healthcare. Healthcare is a really important part of any state's economy. The problem with Mississippi, however, is that we have imposed on the healthcare economy a system of socialist planning. This is known as the Certificate of Need system, or the Con Laws. For the past 40 years, if you've owned or wanted to expand or come into the market as a healthcare provider, you basically had to get a permit known as a Certificate of Need. The process means that you have to demonstrate to a group of bureaucrats that there is a need for your service. Now, under the law, the Con Laws in Mississippi, unfortunately, it's set up to avoid what's known as duplication in the market. The reality, though, is that duplication is what in other markets is called competition. So as a result of this system of socialist planning in Mississippi, our healthcare economy is stuck in the past. It can't grow, we can't get innovation, we can't get competition. It's a disaster for the Mississippi economy. In order for Mississippi to become part of the Southern success story, we need universal school choice and we need complete deregulation of the healthcare economy. If we do that, we will be as dynamic as Florida. It's no coincidence that in Florida, not only do they not have a state income tax, they got rid of their con regulations and their con laws, and they pioneered school choice. Mississippi needs to be more like Florida and less like Mississippi was 30 or 40 years ago.